Today I have the great fortune of speaking to someone whose work I'm really into. His name's Alessio Santini, and he is the mastermind behind K Devices. K Devices, if you don't know him, you probably should. Especially if you're in the Ableton Live world, you've run across their packs. They've done some really, really neat stuff. Some of my favorites are like the Terra synth, the little holder device, which I'm just always fascinated with. But they've done a ton of stuff, and recently they branched out into more things. So let me stop talking. Let's talk to Alessio. Hey, man, how's it going?
Hey, it's great. Thanks, Davin. Thanks for this proposition. I'm really happy to be in your podcast.
Well, I'm very happy to have you on board. This is great. It was neat. Marsha Vdovin, the PR person, she calls herself a PR maven. She suggested, because I really am a big user of your gear, and so it's neat to have the opportunity to talk with you.
Oh, good.
For people who aren't that familiar yet with K Devices, why don't you give us a quick rundown of the kinds of things that you do?
Basically, we are a company that design Max for Live devices. So it started with Max for Live, and now recently, thanks to Gen environment in Max, we are starting to release also other kind of products. Last June, we released our first iOS application. It's called Shaper. It's an effect, and it works and standalone and as an audio unit extension in iOS. From here, we are working to release also audio unit effect for desktop platforms. So mainly is this software, started with Max for Live, and now other platform too.
Shaper is your first iOS application?
Yes.
So how did you find that transition? I mean, in the case of doing Max for Live devices, it's pretty easy to find where or get the attention of people, right? Because Max for Live, it runs inside of Ableton Live. There are a few main places you can talk to live users. iOS to me seems like, I don't know, it seems like a circus. I don't even know how you get anybody's attention there. What has that been like?
Yes, it's another world, of course. It's another community. And for us, the interest in developing for this platform grow up slowly, okay? Starting from the features of Gen that let you export the code. This gave us the first idea of, hey, maybe we can do something else too, okay? We are happy with Max for Live. I can talk about this later if you want. But also reaching also other kind of users was also a challenge for us. So it was interesting. We already developed this app Shaper almost 1 year ago. Then we stopped the development when the audio unit extension thing came up strongly, okay? So I think that this bring to iOS workflow that it's more usable finally, okay? I mean, already the interrupt audio standard, it's cool, okay? Because if you think before that, there was just a single working audio applications, okay? So this bring to iOS a workflow idea, if you want. Then this thing of the audio unit make the things more similar to how you do on your desktop, okay? The main part of musicians today, I think, play with desktop or laptop computers, okay? So this is something that I think slowly will take more place in the composition work for people, okay? So it was an interesting place to be, if you want. And so we developed this app, this is the first of a series, just to see how we can interact with this kind of users, okay? This is also why we decided we chosen to realize let me say, a simple effect, okay? It's not a revolutionary application. It's, let's say, just an effect. This is because we want to introduce a brick in this workflow. And we want to make a simple, if you want, but well-working brick, a simple thing that do its job well, and that slowly can take place in the wish list of the musicians of different kind of music. So this is why we are on iOS.
Well, no, that's really interesting. And it's interesting that it was the audio units implementation that caused you to make that make that leap. And I have to tell you, I think that you were actually smart to wait, because I have had fits and starts over the years trying to enjoy working with audio on an iOS device. And the reason has been just there were too many different ways you had to work. There wasn't a seamless workflow. And so, as you suggest, that a lot of times made it very difficult to enjoy working with multiple applications.
I agree.
So then you would have to find an application that had every function you ever wanted, and there's no such thing that exists, right?
Yes, yes, yes. I have to say that as a user, I have an iPad, but since some times ago, I was not really able to play music on iPad, okay?
Right.
Because I see that more like a really powerful, if you want, gadget, but something was missing about my needs as composer, okay? Now I see a chance to create chains of effect, etc. And this became possible to me too. This is also why we thought finally to come on iOS, because we started to see ourselves as possible iOS musicians, if you want. So
Right.
this is happened strongly with Audio Unit, okay? So I prefer, also when I do some, I never really finished some composition on iPad, but it's became something where I can start to work on some idea, to sketch something. And I have to say that I prefer to work, this is also from all my life, also with UST, with Max. I prefer to work with little bricks that I can chain and manipulate as I want, I push
Right.
as I want,
Right.
instead of really super doing stuff software. Okay.
Sure.
So this is my approach. This is why Shaper came up in this form.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, yeah. And it's kind of interesting, too, to really think of, I hadn't thought about it this way before, but really the way that the iOS audio units, and for that matter, even audio units on the desktop works, is components, just like Mac's objects are components, and just like live devices are components. And so,
Yes.
yeah, it's kind of seems like you've surrounded yourself with components.
Yes, absolutely. This is also the way I work when I compose my own music, and this is the way I used to think about new products. Okay, I want our products be a part of a solid workflow. Our goal is to improve the experience that people have with an already well-known workflow. Let's see, Ableton Live. We just talked about iOS, etc. We want to be an intriguing part of this.
So, what kind of music do you make when you're making music?
Oh, yes. This is a really complex question. If I talk too much, you stop me, please. So it's interesting because I come from really in the 90s. I'm old guy. In the 90s, I played guitar in doom metal bands. Okay, doom metal was something that really inspired me for a lot of time. This absence of structure, this priority to the timbre of the sound, it was something that really talked to me. Okay, so this is something that I always carried with me about during my life as student, as developer. When I met Max, and it was, I think, 2002, I was a student in Bologna, in Italy. And of course, this experience, I think this has changed everything for me.
Right.
Okay. First, I'm not a geek. I'm not an informatic background as a student. Okay, I studied stuff of literature, Latin, etc. I was really not the right type of dude to work with that. But I interacted with the software, and really I found a way to work with it and to take what I need in my way. Okay, so this took me a lot of time, a lot of effort. I think that during 2010, I do not make really music. Made really music something that you finish. Okay, I never do that. I have hard drive full of experiment sound that I exported directly with a ESF Records object, but I was no longer able to compose something with a start and a finish. This is also, I think, because then in 2005 I moved to Paris, Université Paris 8, where I made a master in science and technology of arts, with a professor that really inspired me. His name is Alessio Santini. It's a composer from Argentina, and it's really a pioneer of the granulation of sound and microarticulation. And this was also a big love for me to do what you can do with granulation. It's to take a matter and to create other matter from that. It's really concrete as work. And also, once this really gave me a lot of feelings to granulate sound, to make this kind of process. So, on one side, you spend a lot of time of a software that give a lot of possibilities, but it's also an ocean, okay? So, to find where to go, it's different that when I don't know, in 2000, when I opened Cubase, you put in some MIDI stuff. It was another world.
Right.
Exciting, but I was really lost, I think, as musicians. I learned a lot as developer, but I was lost. I also, to learn better, Max, I think I also stopped at the time to create an aesthetical thought about my music. So I really dropped these things. And on the other side, it was also, I think, because my two big passions was two extremes, if you want. Because if you think to Doom or Drone, as you have today, you have an almost absence of articulation and this slow time, if you want. Right. On the other side, articulation of sound, you have a lot of articulation, and the time go really fast. Okay, you are in the millisecond domain. So I think that it took to me a lot of time to merge these two worlds, because as musician, I am these two things. Okay, I cannot do one without the other one, because it will be not me, no longer me. So I really had. I need a lot of time to create something that merges these two worlds and that can represent me to myself.
Right.
And to answer finally to your question, I came today to create some music that use both these two elements. Okay, so I use a lot of guitars, so really massive and harsh distortions. And I also use in different way. Sometimes it's like to the percussive pulsation purposes, and I use granulation of microarticulation techniques. So, by the way, my first release in a lot of time will be this next November. It's an EP CD. 4 tracks, and this is really important for me because it's an important chapter. Really, it's an arrival for me. I am somewhere now. Okay, I was floating during all these years as composer. Now I am somewhere. I am someone. I have a proposition for me and for the other two, and so that's it. Really. Not ambient, because there is a lot of articulation, but microarticulation of sound, and the guitar, it's always the source of any sound I use. And on the other side, you have this guitar, where the most important part is the search, the quest for a sound.
Well, it's very interesting, and I think it's cool that you actually are able to talk about it not.
Sorry, I had a little problem. Can you repeat, please?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, all right. I think it's very interesting that you're willing to discuss the fact that it's not easy to come up with your own voice, right? Sometimes people make it seem like, well, I was kind of like, I went for a walk and I came back and I had this new artistic vision.
Yes. Oh,
sure. I wish it was that easy, right?
I do not know if this should be for everyone, but for me, to compose, it's really hard.
Yeah.
Maybe that depends on me, on what I want from me, but it's really a hard process It's really tiring if you want.
Sure.
And honestly, I like it's like that. I like that the music. It's really an act of exposition of life, if you want. So it costs life. It asks for energies.
Right.
And to find who you are, and as I said, when you listen to your music, to have the feeling to look in a mirror, it's hard. For me, it was impossible during these 10 years. Now it's possible, and I don't know, maybe my music is not good. I don't know, but I'm happy because I found what I should be in music, I think.
Right.
This is, as human being, doing music, it's really a gift. I feel really lucky now in these days.
Well, that sounds really exciting, and I think it's really interesting too to imagine what process you must have gone through being kind of into doom metal, and then all of a sudden encountering Max and computer music and this kind of generative work. I would think that the ears that you developed for doom metal didn't help you understand computer music very well. Would that be true?
I have to say that when I met Max, I don't say that before, I dropped totally the guitar for years.
Oh, wow.
So one replaced the other one for a while. Then I started to take again the guitar. And today, this long pause made of me a really strange guitarist, I think, because I forgot a lot of things. I really use the guitar as a timbre generator. Okay, I do not play notes. I look for a sound, and then yes, of course, Max opened this. When I took back the guitar in my hand, I was pretty good in Max, and this let me see the guitar, the possibilities of the guitar in a totally another way. So that's it. I think my path was that Max replaced my previous life. It's true. It was really first years that I was in Paris. I spent a lot of time. But I think all the guys that play Max, the patch really intensively know that I passed a lot of time with this software. It's really changed me, I think. But I don't want to be too romantic, but also as person changed me. I don't know. It was I have a really deep relationship with Max today. Yes. Also because if I know. This work, this job that I have with Max for Life, with K Devices, I'm really happy with that. I live in a really rural environment now for my choice, and I live on top of the mountains here in between France and Italy. And when I came here, I knew that there was no a job in domain music for me. Okay, I live in Paris. I quit this kind of job that I loved. Okay, I done research from interesting project with staff for theaters, etc. But at one time, the city was good, but I wanted to change. Okay, I came here in 2009, I think, and there was no music job around. And Max for Live came out, and I said, okay, let's try to do something. If there a possibility to create a market, if you want, if there is a chance, and it worked. So also Max saved my life from this point of view, because if not, I had to change the place where I live, or I had to accept a job that is not what I love. So
yeah. Well, you and I share that in common, because Max has allowed me to live where I want. I used to live up on the top of a mountain. Now I live next to 10,000 lakes. So it's pretty amazing that Max lets us do that.
Yes.
So I'm curious, though, then, one of the things that I experienced when I was living kind of in a rural place is that I got a lot of joy out of using Max, but I also felt like it was difficult to stay connected with musical trends and musical interests and all that stuff. I mean, the internet makes it somewhat available, but there's nothing like being around people. you know. Do you
Yes.
travel around in order to sort of engage with the community? Or are you kind of hiding out in the mountains right now?
So I want to be honest. I love to live here. Thanks also because when I came to live here, technology says internet. Let me take a look around. Okay,
Right.
but I love to live here. I go out. I develop my stuff. Then I can go out, take my dog, and go in the wood. This is really something that heal me and inspire me. And on the other side, of course, there is a price. There is a price. It's that okay. There is internet. I can listen to music. I can see what happens out there. But it's not like to be there. Okay. So yes, I travel, but not so much. I have to say. On the other side, I have also to say that I'm quite misanthropic guy. So the good part is I do not need. There's people that really need to be among the others. Okay, I'm really independent from this point of view.
Okay.
But of course, there is a price. Sometimes I would like to travel more. Okay, I do some movement to see some concert. I'm not far from Italian city that's Torino. There's a big city. There's a lot of concert. I
Right.
go sometimes in Berlin because of Ableton. It happens. It happened, and yes, I move a little, but I also quite lazy. So it's I'm happy in this. This is the right formula for me. Huh? I have my work, my if I can say woods, and the possibility of travel and to go not so far to find some cultural life. Okay, I passed a lot of my life in cities, and so I know that, and I know what I miss from that. Sometimes I enjoy, of course, to see some exposition or some concert. Yes.
Sure. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the devices that you've made for Max for Live, because I find them really interesting. But one of the things that I'm curious about is what kind of team do you have behind K Devices? I know that you're sort of the mastermind behind it. Do you have other developers or sound designers that you work with?
Yeah, sure. Mainly, especially on the last products, I work alone. But I collaborate with external person to realize some projects. So, for example, a very important person for K Devices today, also today, it's Simone Fabbri. Simone Fabbri is the guy that own the Eurorack brand Frap Tools, and we started together. When we started, I was doing the DSP. He started to work with me for the user interfaces. Then, with time, we changed our contributions. There's a lot of products where it's deeply involved. It's an important part of the company. As I maybe already said, for iOS application, for example, I say we because Simone it's involved in this project of the iOS application as shaper and future app to come. We work with an external guy that do the code for us. We export the DSP with Gen. We export the code of the user interface with other software, and this guy merge these two parts and help us with the Apple, specifically Apple developer domain. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Also because, as I said, this is maybe not good to say, but since I am lazy, I'm happy with what I do. For example, to be in the Apple Store and to really well exploit this domain, I prefer to refer to a person that I trust, that can do this work for me, instead to start. I love learn new things, but not in this kind. I think I'm not too good I'm not a good coder, if you want. So I know my limits, and if I have an idea, let's say a design, a concept, I want to realize it. I see where I am dependent, where I need someone that can handle in the right way for me, instead to mess with things that where I'm not too strong, if you want. As I said, really, this is true. I'm not an informatic guy, so I have a mentality, the shape of my mind. It's not so flexible on all the software tools or environments.
Well,
I
yeah,
know my
but
limits.
the other side of it, I recently in a different area, I did an interview with somebody, and they were talking about how if you feel like you have to do everything, then you have an infinite number of things to do, and so you won't do
Mhm.
anything well.
Yes.
And I think that it's interesting that you are willing to say there are things that other people know better than me, and I'm going to let them do that. I'm curious though. So, in working with Fabri, how do you influence each other? Because the work that he does on those Eurorack tools is some pretty amazing and kind of bizarre stuff. And I would say the kind of devices you make are kind of a little insane and bizarre. And so it
This is
seems like you guys must influence each other. How does it work to between you in terms of driving each other forward?
okay. This is a fun story. Fun story. Yes, there is really a deep influence, mutual influence. Okay, so if you want, Simone have a vision of things that it's maybe better shaped. Okay, and me on my side, I'm a little bit chaotic. If you want, I like this. I like this. I like that this part of Simone. So usually, one of us came with an idea. We develop the idea. When the idea is working, we start with the user interface, and we do all together. Okay, so there's some task that he does, some tasks that I do,
Uh-huh.
and but all the time we talk together to have a feedback from the other. When we go almost finished the product and we have to choose, for example, user interface or function, I add on function, I delete this function, etc. This is a real two words, two different way to see words. We are different kind of users. There is the fight. Okay, there is a real there is
Disagreement. Yeah.
it's yes, it's really we know each other, so it's also fun because we know today the way we work. So there is a lot of diplomacy, a lot of fight. Finally, the product is perfectly the shape of a synthesis of both of us on this kind of tool, okay, for a synthesizer, for an
Sure.
effect, etc. I think it's nice to work with him, and it's really it happens when the two person interact in an intelligent way. If you want, it's enriching experience for me and for him. Okay, we are different person, different musicians, different
Hmm.
live users, different Max users. We merge together our efforts, and of course, something one have to renounce to something, the other one again on the other side, and it's clear. It's an interaction that it's pointed to a synthesis.
Sure.
So this process involve fight and diplomacy, as we we say all the time.
That's
It's
funny.
fun. It's fun. It's fun. This also I like in this job. We do our vision. We talk. It's good. It's romantic if you want. I
Yeah.
like. I like to work with him.
Yeah, interesting. Well, it's funny too that you talk about him as being kind of the focused part and you're the chaotic part. It makes me then wonder when I look at some of your devices who is influencing what, right? Because like to me, I found Terra a very interesting polysynth because it's sort of like embraced some weird chaotic behaviors, and ring modulation is a real big part of that synth and all this kind of stuff. It's the kind of approach you don't normally see on a synthesizer. And
Hmm.
I'm
Thanks.
curious about, the decision making process and how, is that an example of something that encapsulates the way that you like think think about music? I'm always curious with people who
Yes.
design instruments, how much of the instrument informs us about how they think of music.
This is an important question for a developer. And sure, I think, again, there is an interactive relationship with the software.
Hmm.
Because also, if I think before Max for Live to my patches that I did back in time for my work, you start with an idea. Also in Max for Live, you have an idea for a product. You start with an idea, but when the idea came to a first state of life, it start producing sound of processing sound, if it's an effect, it starts to talk to you, okay? Personally, I hear a lot about maybe different kind of developer that start with a project or with a workflow, and they come to the end with this workflow. For me, this is impossible, but I like this. I start with an idea, and then it's live, if you want, and start to talk to me and suggest different things, different features, or features that it was there, not work really good in this shape, so I change something. So when I start a product, I have an idea, but the final product is different, of course, from the initial idea, because during the development, it became something, and I look up something, I'm influenced by this. Of course, it happens all the time. Also, when I start with, I don't know, for me, I realize a lot of patches about generation, make articulation, etc. I can start with an idea about, I don't know, a rule about the time handling, if you want, but it's good, it may be good, but when I listen to the result, I see something else too. So, okay, I open, I change. And this happens also with products. Maybe with products, you know what you want at the end, so because it's for other people. So it's there is, if you want some class of effects, you are doing a delay, you're doing a spectral filter, you're doing a synthesizer. So there is a class, there is a target, okay. But in our experience, when I work alone, or when I work with Simone, a product never finished as it was conceived at the start. Never.
That's a really interesting point, but it also then makes me wonder, how much do you change in the process of making the instrument? So if you start off with ideas, and then it kind of morphs and switches with time. I mean, when you look at an end product like something like Terra, how far away from it is from what you started off with? Because you must have started off with an idea, either with like these morphing waveforms, or just the way you were doing cross modulation or something. There was some nugget that you started with. When you get to the end, how different is it from where you started?
Oh, well, it's really different because Terra took development of more than 1 year, I think a year and a half. When we started, it was because we wanted to create our proper synthesizer, to bring our vision in this kind of music part, synthesis. And when we started, look, I want to be honest. Terra took this name. Its initial code name was Terra because the engine was wave terrains. And then we started with wave terrains, and we created the structure, the effects, some effects. There was an initial part of modulators, not so complex. And we decided together, Simone and I, that it was better to create another kind of endgame. This changed other things in the chain, and it brings to us other kind of features that we can include in Terra. So I have to say that Terra, there is really a lot of work beyond this device, because it's something that, this is really the case, it's something that talked to us, suggesting other ways to do things. At the end, what we wanted was a synthesizer, a rich synthesizer that let you versatile, if you want.
Right.
And if you listen to the preset, I have to say that, in my opinion, the goal it's here. It's really versatile, and it was also really another interesting thing. We asked to some sound designer to create these presets, and also if Simone and I worked a lot about on this synthesizer, really a gift. It's when other people come to you with your instrument and make sound from your instrument that you created, that you say, wow, how you do that with the synth. You know the power of this synth, but you are another kind of user. When the people, the sound designer, the really good guys, came with these presets, it's an epiphany for a developer. I'd say, wow, my instrument can do all of this, and you are just one person. You designed it, but you cannot have or simulate all the needs, all the different kind of inspiration that other people can have.
Right.
So what's really interesting? Yes.
Well, I wonder though then too, one of the potential problems as a designer, and because I know this happens to me all the time, is I start working on something and I add more features, which means more controls, and the next thing is I have something that only I can make sense of it. No one else can understand it, right? Because there
Yes,
are too
sure.
many parameters, or there's too many labels, or not enough labels, or the things that should be knobs or sliders or whatever. For whatever reason, people can't get over the hump of learning it. How do you approach it? Do you worry about that part of it, or do you
Of course.
want to expose as much information as possible?
This is really important to us, and this is changed in time. Okay, when we started, we had less experience on that. But what we do usually is to create the device with the features that we like on it. What happens next is we try to rationalize the instrument. Okay, so we ask to other people to use it, and usually, if you look at our devices, there is a significant number of parameters. Okay, so we delete some stuff when it's too much, but usually we try to create a user interface that can be deep and rich, but it's logic. I don't want to. I cannot say easy, but logic to understand. Okay, you start from a part. For example, Terra. You have the tree oscillator, you have the DSR, you have the effects, you have the modulator. So in one way, we can say that it's easy to understand, but it's still complex.
Right.
So what we try to do is to give to user the choice. Okay, we include a lot of parameters, but our effort is to try to make it logic to read, okay, the user interface. And for example, now I'm working on a new series of devices that I will release later this month. It's another history, and I tried to create something more symbolic. Okay, the interfaces, it's totally different from what we did until today, and there is no words in the user interface, so there is not label to say this is the volume, this is but I try to make a self-explanatory user interface. So when you touch a parameter, and of course we are in live, so you are also the live info view on the left, there is a description. But when you touch the device, when you touch the parameter, there is an animation, an animation, of course, philologically integrated in the user interface that make you understand what you are doing. And this was a sort of challenge for me. And when I started to do it, on one side, I think that they are really beautiful, this interface. So I said, okay, this is good to see. It's beautiful. I want it. And keep it working in this way. And I think finally I found a good synthesis, because they are exotic, a little bit exotic if you want. You see this and say, what's that? But after 1 minute, you understand how it works, what it does, each part of the user interface. It was an experiment, but I think I really enjoyed it, and I hope the people too. We'll see in a month.
Very interesting. Well, Alessio, we're getting close to the end of our time, but before I let you go, I'm curious. You talk about having a big folder on your hard drive filled with experiments from your years of working with Macs. I'm wondering, what are the kinds of things that you have kind of in your laboratory that have yet to come out?
For me, I'm working on... Well, I recently get in touch with the company Mod Devices. I got a Mod Duo, this pedal. Thanks to Jen, I'm working, for my purposes, I'm working to some effect that I want to create a sort of rig for live set after the release of this CD. And so on one side, I'm working on that. On the other side, I'm working with more devices. I'm in touch with them also because there is I'm developing something for them. So also SK devices, this answer to your question, as future instrument will have this series of devices that I just talked about, and I hope some more duo compatible effects, new iOS application. And I think the next step will be to bring a version of Holder. It's a spectral freezer on iOS.
Nice.
This is I like Holder. It's one of my favorite devices. You know,
it's one of mine too. It's nutty.
Almost my live set have at least one instance of Holder and one instance of, I don't know if you know it. It's a modulator that it's called Ext. It's basically it's a step sequencer that modulates a target in live. Okay. But you have some strange features. It's really rich, and these are the two devices of us that I use the most. Of course, absolutely.
So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk. It's really been great. I'm glad to hear that you're going to find a way to get some of this stuff on hardware. I'm a big fan of having stuff run on hardware too, and I'm a big fan of on devices. So that's a match made in heaven for me as well. But I want to thank you for spending the time talking and giving us some insight on how you design and how you think about this stuff. It's really interesting.
My pleasure.
And many thanks to Alessio for having the chat. Man, guy's doing some neat work. If you haven't tried the K Devices stuff, you really need to get yourself out there and give it a try. Currently, unless you're an iOS person, which I'm not, so I can't help you out much with, but most of their action is happening in Ableton Live as Max for Live devices. Go ahead and check them out. It's worth the effort. Again, much like Alessio himself, I use Holder in practically every live set that I work on, so there's that. I want to thank you, the listeners, for sticking with me, keeping cranking these out. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. I also want to thank everybody that helped out on the Facebook feed. I put out a call for help to find some interviewees, and I got some great options. In fact, by the end of next week, I'll have like 10 of them in hopper, which is great because I have a lot of travel in November and December, so I needed your help. Thank you so much for that. Stay tuned for some amazing discussions over the next few weeks, next couple of months. Thanks a lot, and we'll catch you around next time. Bye.